Arthur, I do actually, I think a lot of people have questions about how this even got to this stage. You know, a magistrate judge took a look at this document, which was littered with errors and debunked claims, and approved a search warrant. How does that happen?
Let me give you another disclaimer. So I represented Mayor Rudy Giuliani having to do with his claims about the election. And I know a lot about it, and I know a lot of people about it. And this is not my personal opinion, but there are many people who very much believe, especially the Georgia part of it, that there was even if Trump didn't actually win, there was a lot of improprieties that took place, and they have evidence that they point to, and they can articulate it. It doesn't take that much to get a magistrate under these circumstances to sign a search warrant. I don't know the background of the magistrate, so I don't want to speak to that. I don't want to know where their mindset is or their politics is. But for them to sign it and say, go ahead, go in there and...
So they don't even look at the facts that are laid out and...
Well, of course they do.
You're a defense attorney. You're defending this warrant?
I come on here with Abby to just try to tell you what the law is on both sides.
And this is why I want to sort this out, because I think, honestly, the main question that people have this week is, how does a document like this get through a judge and produce a warrant on an extremely sensitive place, an election office? And then there are things in there that are obviously false, that have already been debunked.
Do you think Judge Boasberg gives that warrant?
I think there was another warrant that was given about a journalist's home or place of business. That troubled me even more than this, because now you're getting people's sources. But in terms of this, look, Abby, they went to try to get a warrant the other night in the Nancy Guthrie case, and that guy had nothing to do with anything. Judges are put in these positions where someone comes before them, raises their hand, tells them what they think, what they believe.
It's just rubber stamp.
It mostly is. It typically is all over the country.
I do not think most judges would have given that warrant. That was a particularly weak affidavit. That was a particularly weak claim. I do not think most judges in the country would give that warrant. However, you can find one, and it only takes one, right? Which is why I'm not so much concerned about this particular 2020 raid. I think that if there is a hell, and I'm not saying that there is, but if there is a hell, it will include Donald Trump forever trying to find 11,780 votes. That is, he will be like Tantalus, just trying to find these votes, right? Yes. That is 2020. I'm not concerned about 2020. I am concerned about 2026. I am concerned about 2028. And if you can find this kind of judge to give a warrant on this affidavit to go seize ballots from 2020 in Fulton County, then what will she say you can go seize in 2026? What will she say you can go seize in 2028? That's the actual problem. And that's not just me saying it. That is election law professor Rick Hassan. That is Mark Elias. That is people who are concerned about the integrity of our elections saying that the granting of this warrant doesn't really matter about 2020 because he lost 2020. He's never going to not lose 2020. He can only remind people that he lost 2020. But what does this say about what the system is willing to give him the authority to do in 2026 and 2028?
And Pete, one of the witnesses, or the witness that they relied on for this affidavit, is a current Georgia resident and a chemical engineer who filed this 2022 complaint with the State Board of Elections alleging that, quote, extra ballots were injected into the absentee ballot count. Other witnesses included Republican-appointed Trump-aligned members of the Georgia State Board of Elections who described missing ballot images in Fulton County records. These are things that are not only not substantiated, but also disproven by the multiple vote counts and recounts. So what is this FBI, what is this DOJ up to? And also, by the way, why is Tulsi Gabbard even on the ground in Georgia?
Well, it's been proven that the election in Fulton County was mismanaged. It was very sloppy. We know, there's...
Proven by whom?
The Atlanta Journal-Constitution, or whatever the paper's called, has done multiple stories about this. We know...
About what?
Can you let me finish, Abby? There were votes that were double counted. Now, was it enough to overturn the election? No.
Let me clarify. When you say votes that are double counted, are you suggesting that those so-called double counted votes ended up in the final count?
Yes.
They did not.
Yes, it was.
These votes were
I'll send
counted
you-
and recounted
You sent
3
us the link
times.
to read before the show. It's in the actual article you sent us. Number
it was
one.
recounted 3 times.
Okay, number two, if you let me finish, Abby, is to back up on election fraud, voter fraud, is when Republicans lose, they say the election was rigged and it was fraudulent. When Democrats lose, they say it was rigged and voters were disenfranchised. And yes, there is an obsession among some Republicans to continue relitigating the 2020 election, just like there is a complete lack of desire from the one-time candidate for governor in the state of Georgia, Stacey Abrams, to concede that she lost in 2018.
She has conceded.
No, she has not conceded that
conceded.
election.
Now,
she may have conceded
she didn't-
2022,
she didn't
but throughout
concede-
that entire
she didn't
campaign, she
concede
refused to
immediate-
concede.
She didn't concede in. I will give you that she did not.
Okay, look,
concede
okay,
in
if she
the
did, it took
immediate
her years.
aftermath of that
It
race,
took her
but she
literal
has since
years to concede,
yes.
if that's the case.
Yeah.
So, but the bottom line is both sides, because they live in algorithmically created, concocted cocoons of information, don't know how to lose. And this is on both sides. You don't like whataboutism, but it is the facts that both Republicans and Democrats act this way.
It's very difficult to hear you bring up Stacey Abrams when it wasn't Stacey Abrams on the phone asking for votes to be found.
But she refused to concede an election.
They're not
if
the
a Republican
same thing.
does that,
Are you living in an alternative universe? Like, someone who is in power asking brazenly, openly to find votes. Do you not understand how destructive that is for democracy? It's not about taking a position based upon political leanings. Like, it's extremely problematic.
And
what's happening is that
but
this is becoming more brazen
as well.
No, you have Kurt Olson from Stop the
Steal
Steal getting sensitive material from intelligence agencies because Donald Trump has said that it's okay. So people who normally would be on the most on the fringes, who would not have access to this information, are now legitimized because of this president and the way that he's handled it. That's not okay.
I'll just point out that the votes in Georgia in 2020 have been recounted more than the votes in Florida in 2000.
I said that there was no
indication
that the election was overturned. I literally said that.
Hold on one second. We got to go. But Pete, just to your point about any errors, which, by the way, human errors occur in every single election in every part of the country all the time. But those errors were recounted and had absolutely no effect on the final vote count in the county or in the
I
state.
acknowledge that nothing would have overturned the election.
So
I said
not just it didn't overturn the election, those errors were not carried over into the final count. That's super important for people to understand. But